Greetings, everybody. This is Elisa from the Rebel Crone with another interview, another inspiring interview with a woman that I know personally, and I feel like her life and the choices she's made, the struggles she's overcome, the wisdom that she carries now is very profound and is very inspiring. So join me with another episode because I've interviewed her before, Dr. Cori. But this time we're going to talk about personal things. We're going to talk about her journey of aging and how she's overcome things in her life. So I hope that this is as inspiring to you as it is for me. Welcome to Wisdom of the Modern Crone. My name is Elisa Chastain, creator of the Rebel Crone, and I'm your host. This podcast is dedicated to women that have defied the stereotype of aging. They are living life on their own terms with grace, wisdom, and power. I consider these modern crones to be the living keepers of wisdom. Dr. Cori, welcome. Welcome back.
Yes, happy to be back. I love working with you.
Oh, thank you. And I have to say, happy birthday, my dear. I would sing you a song, but nobody would want to hear me singing you a song. So
That's okay then. We'll skip that.
we'll just skip that part. So, anyways, you want to, excuse me, I'm just getting over a little cold. So I've got a little stuffiness going on. So, do we want to confess our age and let everybody know what you're proud of here?
Sure. Today I am 62 years young.
Years, yeah, I love that. Absolutely. Well, congratulations. You are officially a crone. As I am
Yay!
too. As I am too. Yay. And that's what this is about, right? This is what we want to talk about is just demystifying this whole stigma around women getting older. You know, in our society, we are just so marginalized and we're just told we have no value anymore. And I'm telling you, the women that I know that are around my age and older are spectacular, powerful, graceful, incredible women. So here we go. Dr. Cori, I'm going to start with a really great question for you. You ready?
Sure. Hit
Okay,
me.
I hit you. When did you first know that you were a rebel?
I kind of grew up in a rebel environment. My mom came of age in the 60s and she was an artist. So she was a hippie artist. She was exhibiting her art in Greenwich Village on the street back when she was 18. And that's how she met my dad. So I was raised in that kind of very, let's say, loose environment where kind of raised myself and had to just figure out stuff on my own. Um, so fast forward though to my 30s. My 30s is when I started noticing programming. So
Mm,
even though I was already a little bit, let's say a little bit of what I call an errant, not a non-conformist, a thinking outside of the box kind of person my whole life. In my 30s, I started looking around me and, like, for example, birthdays, celebrating birthdays. And I started asking some questions like, why do people have to eat cake and blow out candles on their birthday? I don't agree with that. I don't want to do that anymore. And I stopped doing it. Like it wasn't meaningful to me. And then I started looking at other rituals that people seem compelled to participate in, holiday rituals. I just took a step back and started looking at it like it was strange to me. It wasn't meaningful. And I started opting out. I stopped participating in any rituals that I didn't feel in my heart that I didn't have affinity with. And a lot of people thought I was very strange, especially my family. But I didn't actually care, which is part of being a rebel, right? You don't really care what other people think. And I just refused to do anything that wasn't meaningful to me. I then decided to become a chiropractor. I had a midlife career change. When I woke up on my 32nd birthday and realized that I was not fulfilling my purpose in life. And that turned into me deciding to go to chiropractic school and become an alternative doctor. And when we were about to graduate, I stood up in front of my class, my graduating class, and I said, "Hey guys, how about instead of us buying an expensive cap and gown and wearing these ugly clothes, and does anybody even know why you do that? Like, what is the meaning behind that uniform? Why don't we create a different ritual, something that's meaningful, something that's, has meaning in this moment?" Well, if they had eggs or tomatoes, they would have thrown them at me. They got really pissed off. One woman stood up and said, "I think we deserve to wear those caps and gowns." And I'm like, what does that even mean? I don't want to deserve that. That's like a punishment. Anyway, I did not win that argument. I had to wear a cap and gown. I guess I could have refused, but I gave in. And then from there, it's just lived. I've lived my life that way, marching to the beat of my own drum.
Oh, I love that. And that you just described so perfectly. If you want to say like an errant, a rebel, a nonconformist. And for me, that is a person, it usually starts very young. That's why I would like to lead the conversation with that, because no matter what, it's like and it has a child is what we recognize that things aren't right. You know, we start questioning things. We start questioning why people do things. Why do you act a certain way? Why are you doing this ritual? Why is there this convention you're following? And we respond to it in different ways, but what I know for myself is that it set up this internal tension. It's kind of like this internal, like a misery in a sense, because I'm like, oh, I just can't like, it just doesn't feel good following along with the herd. It doesn't feel good. We don't know why as we're younger, but it's just an innate thing. You're just kind of born with that or you're not born with that. Sometimes maybe people develop it later, which is cool. It doesn't, times are relevant. But this is like, I love what you're saying about it because I feel like that really epitomizes, the I don't want to say a label, but that spirit, that spirit that's come in. And when you're talking, Dr. Cori, the word that kept coming to me is this woman's a change agent. You are a change agent. And that is just, it was from the start. And you skipped over a lot of things about you and your calling to be in the healing professions and has some kind in the medical things. I remember stories when you're younger and how you already were taking on that role because you knew that's who you are. But it's really that thing about change, and it's not like for me the feminine way of change is very different than the masculine way that's dominated this world. And we don't have to go off real deep into this, but it's a little different when we talk about the feminine nature making changes because there's a graciousness about it. And in all your stories, I feel like this graciousness of knowing like when to push and when to pull back with it. And even at a young age of 32 and 32, when we're looking backward twice that age, I'm exactly twice that age, that's still very, very young. But you knew when to pick your battle, when to back off on that. So let's just keep moving forward with this. And because it's really fascinating. You very much fascinate me in your whole journey. What has you started coming up? Because I think in the 40s is women, things start coming to a crux. They start physically, things start changing in our bodies because we're coming into the change time hormonally. But I also feel like that some like the bad habits or the toxicities at all different levels start to come to focus in our 40s, like what's working for us, what's not working for us. Could you address a little bit about your journey in your 40s leading up to the time of change, which I'm talking about menopause, but I don't want to name it that because we don't like that man made by men designation because it's an incredible time of change. So could you talk a little bit about what comes to mind for you, like in your 40s and what you had to overcome, what realizations, and all the different levels?
Yes. So I happen to be an expert in the subject of hormonal changes because of my profession and helping other women with that. So when it started happening to me, I was very aware of what was going on. And really, it just started with I had always had extremely regular menstrual cycles. You could tell the calendar by my cycle. And what the first thing that changed was simply that it was no longer regular. And I'm a little bit strange in the sense that I actually am one of the few women that I've ever met that actually enjoyed having the female cycle. I enjoyed ovulation. I enjoyed the increase in my sex drive during ovulation. I enjoyed actually menstruating. I enjoyed feeling, let's say, a little more sleepy during that time and resting a little more. I enjoyed having, I know this is going to sound so strange. I enjoyed having menstrual cramps and then feeling better when they went away. All of the contrasts that the menstrual cycle presented to me emotionally and physically. Um, so as
But can we just stop and put a pin on this one for just a second? Because
sure.
this is revelatory for me. Because I don't
Mhm.
think I have ever spoken to a woman that's articulated this. Yet in my heart, I know that our experience with our cycle as younger women doesn't have to be what it has been, because I think there's like a mindset on it of what we come into is, oh, and now it's the big interruption every month and the thing that throws us off. And because we don't understand, this would be my premise with it, because we don't understand it, is that we can't move with it, and we don't know how to honor the phases of it. So how did you, so this is fascinating. How did you come upon knowledge that changed that for you in your studies in your alternative field, or is it just something innately that you just
I always felt that way about it, always. Before I even understood what was going on, clearly understood. I always had an understanding that during ovulation you could get pregnant, and if you didn't want to, you had to be more careful. And I always understood that your sex drive, it's normal for your sex drive to increase during ovulation to encourage, because you were fertile, to encourage pregnancy. And that was part of nature. So I think it was more about just honoring nature and the cycles, the same way that one might honor seasons and the season changes. For me, each cycle was like a season change and the different parts of it. Um, that's not to say it was always pleasant. There were, unpleasant things about it, but I embraced it. So in my 40s, when my cycles started becoming irregular and I recognized that I was changing hormonally, I was not happy about it, honestly. I did not want to lose my monthly cycle. And so um, I was supporting myself uh, hormonally with natural supplements and doing everything I could to to try to stay healthy. I know my mom had gone through a really rough time at that point in her life, and she ended up on antidepressants, and I did not want that to happen to me, and so I was taking herbs and just natural vitamins and minerals and other things to see if I could prolong the cycle, prolong my menstrual cycle. But also, I knew that the older you are before you hit that big change, the big M word that you don't want to use, the healthier it is, because the more estrogen you're producing, the healthier your body is. Estrogen promotes bone strength and hair growth and skin health and just overall health. So it was, moving toward mourning the loss of that cycle, but doing everything I could just to stay healthy. And so it I was 49 when I got my very last period. Um, you don't know it's the last one until you never get it again. So I continued doing everything I could to stay as healthy as possible and also as to keep my body as young and strong as possible. And I'm still doing that. Still doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big thing for women. I mean, just the whole change hormonally. I mean, that's like a whole other show. I mean, we go on and on to so much detail with that and how that really is like that our hormonal system is like the underpinning of so much of our physicality, even the way we think and emotions, all the physical levels of this avatar here. Is based on supported by hormones. So when they change, I mean, it dramatically changes our outlook on so much. And that's part of one of the beauties about becoming a crone is because some of the things that were challenging or the dictates that we flowed with, the natural impulses for procreation. You think about that,
Right.
in our cycles, where we become, more sexually active and desirous at a certain phase, that's about procreation. But then it also
Right.
the spin-off of it is like how attractive I am to men. I have to attract a mate. And there's all these things that we don't necessarily understand. It's a driving force of being people pleasers, of being man pleasers, being because we need to have, I mean, there's just physiological things associated with it. To me, it's just fascinating because we just don't know that because we're not taught that when we're younger. We think this is just the way it is and we be. But when it changes, you all of a sudden you understand, oh, that was because of my hormonal cycles. I had all these other things going on in my psychology. So let's talk about psychology a little bit because you are a human and you are a woman and you had to face the aging process with a physical vehicle in a world that a judges women their physical beauty and that the markers of age aren't ones to be celebrated. Were you did you in this arena, were you just naturally blessed that you're like, oh, wrinkles, oh, saggy skin, oh, extra weight, all these things, bring it on? Or what did you have to face with that as you saw your body physically aging?
So I'm still in the middle of observing that process because it is
It's
physically
still
aging.
changing.
Yes. And I'm still doing everything I can to slow down the aging process. It's part of what I do professionally. And really the healthier you are, the more let's say, nutritionally replete you are, the slower the aging process is going to be. So I really see the aging process as a deterioration of health over time, and I'm determined not to allow that. I have patients in their, 70s, 80s, and 90s, women that look great, that don't look like they're aging, that you would never be able to guess their age. And, I study, well, what's different about them versus I see women my age or younger that look significantly older. So for me, it's not just about the cosmetic, superficial, looking older. It's about the the foundation, the health versus the loss of health. So there have been changes to my body that I don't love, but I feel fortunate that I'm in a relationship with a man that doesn't care about that at all. He completely accepts me for who I am and doesn't see flaws, and um, that helps me to not care about it so much, you know. I just
Now I hear you in that. And, for women that say like, oh, men are so, superficial about the aging thing and they always want these younger women and stuff. That's not every man. That's a certain man. And let me tell you, if that's, an older woman, that's not going to be your man. If that's what they're driven to and that's what turns them on and what they feel like they need and want in their life, no judgment there, but it's just not the guy that's going to be attracted to you. Why would you be attracted to them? It's kind of like my thing with it is like, who cares what they if they like that? There's so many genuine, beautiful men out there and younger men too that appreciate and love a woman as she ages and those kinds of things, the physical changes just don't matter. It is not a
right,
thing for them. So just
right,
know, women, if you're kind of caught in a fear of that, you're younger and you're afraid of all that, is it's nothing to be afraid of, because there are men that mature along with us too. And they see that's not a big deal. And there's some men, just like there's some women that don't mature, you know, but
right,
that's their problem. That doesn't have to be our problem.
exactly.
But so what you're saying on the other stuff, Dr. Corey, is because I see the common thread of as a child, you're the one seeing underneath, like, why are things like this? What is really going on? Why, questioning stuff and let's do things differently. And it's the same thing that you were just describing right now, is that if you see like, the physical signs of aging accelerating in a way, that's not pleasing to you, or you see in your clients that you've looked underneath and you're seeing what the underpinnings of that. It's not just genetics. Oh, she aged well. People say it to me, oh, Lisa, you aged well. Well, I have made a lot of specific choices over a long time to get me to where I am. And then there's some choices that maybe weren't as good choices that I feel now that I'm undoing. I didn't make perfect choices by any means, especially not with health, but I made a lot of really good ones, So that's what I love about your message. It's the same message, right, Dr. Corey? It's the same message you've been saying all along.
That's the only thing I can really say because I literally live my life like that every minute. Every minute I try to make the best possible choice to enhance my health, to enhance my physical well-being, to slow down the aging process, and to basically and I feel like I was going to say, and basically to try to stay as happy as I can, but feeling well physically is really important to happiness because if you don't feel well, or let's say your aging process is interfering with your ability to function or to feel well, because I see that happen with people. And I have so many patients that will say to me things like, yeah, well, I can't walk as fast as I used to. I'm getting old, and they're younger than me. I'm like, that's not why you can't walk fast, okay? So let's figure out what's going on and fix it. So, in order to live life to the fullest, I guess is what it is. I feel like it starts with physical health. That's a starting point. Because also it impacts on your mental functioning and your emotional stability. People often think of it the other way around. They think, they have to figure out how to be happy first, or they have to stabilize their emotions in order to be happy. But what I see is that you have to stabilize your physical body and have it functioning as well as it can be in order for you to be mentally and emotionally stable and even spiritually um, connected, because the physical body can interfere with all those things. It can impact on your emotions, on your thoughts. So that to me, that's always the starting point.
Well, I tell you, my life, I have my experience is that it's a lot easier to think good thoughts. It's a lot easier to think self-empowering thoughts when I feel better. It's just
Right.
it's a tough it's a tough obstacle. It's not that it's impossible, but it makes it so much easier. If I'm, for one thing, I think, and I will do your list with it. But for me, like the big thing is getting enough rest, physically. If I'm tired, like, oh, it's really hard to pull my act together, even nowadays. And I was telling Dr. Cori, I'm coming off a cold that I had insomnia at the same time, probably because it was a sinus thing. And you know what? It was just my days where it was really hard functioning. It was really hard staying upbeat and all that. And I mean, in hydration and the nutrition, I mean, we'll go on down your list with it because it's so important. But I think the key here is that we're made up of all these aspects, right? We're a higher spiritual being focusing in through this physical body. We have a physical avatar for a reason. This is our earthly experience. We have a responsibility with that. If we don't take care of it, in all different ways, and especially physically, I mean, that's a tough road. That's a tough road. What have you found, like with women, obviously women in particular, because that's what we're talking about, in like the aging process, that is it ever too late to turn things around physically? Maybe it's more challenging, but let's give some encouragement for the women that are listening, our peers and older, that are like, I kind of fail. I gotta fail on that one. What is, are they down and out now?
No, in my clinical experience, it's never too late. I have a 94-year-old patient who's absolutely beautiful. Maybe I'll send you a photo of her. Maybe you can and put it on the video. Um, she wrote me a testimonial recently. So she's been seeing me for about 6 months. And she said in the testimonial, when I first came in, I was, pretty much a mess. I had severe gut issues. I had low back pain. She forgot to mention she was lightheaded. She was having burning pain in her feet, all these symptoms. And now, like, she's completely symptom free. She's off medications that she came to me on. And she's a happy individual, and she's 94. So, I mean, that's a very clear example of how somebody can still improve, no matter what age they are.
I did an interview with a friend. Her name's Tamisa, and this will be posted in this series. And she's in her early 70s, and I believe she was 68. Never been athletic. She's been physically. She's a real estate agent and very dynamic woman. You'll tell by her interview that she's definitely one of these lights on, very high energy, but never worked out anything like that. And at like 68, she decided to change her life around, and she started CrossFit. She'd never done a push up, a sit up ever in her whole life. They had explained to her how to do those things. And so 2 years later, I've got pictures I'm posting of her where she entered a fitness bodybuilding competition. And she looks, oh man, you're going to be like, oh my God, that's a 40-year-old, not a 70-year-old woman. And she changed all her nutrition around. She had to bring in a lot of protein in her diet. We didn't go into a lot of detail with that, but she changed her life around, and she worked out and she put muscle on,
Mhm.
and she looks fabulous. And yeah, just very inspiring, for people to think like, oh, they start giving up sometimes in their, men and women, starting in their 40s, 50s, because that's what society, another lie we're told, another story, now you're coasting, and that coasting's all about this downhill business, got to slow down the downhill. Well, no, I mean, maybe some things change in the body that we don't have eternal life at this point, or long, long lives. But oh my God, we can like way slow that down. And, but the other levels we can absolutely like completely change, right? Our emotional being and our spiritual connection and all that. That can be like for me, that's just been growing and increasing all the time at way more rapid rate than any decline down here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, which
Same.
makes that
Mhm.
fun, so let's go, because you're such well, let's let me look back before I go into some like some step by steps. I wasn't going to have this be like a professional thing, like I'm going to pick Dr. Corey's mind, but I think we need to do that, towards the end of this. And let's, kind of give women like some easy steps they can do by themselves. And then, the connection of if they want to, reach out and work with you on this process. But I want to tap in a little bit to like your wisdom, some of your foundational wisdom points that you learned in your life. Because even though you've been this incredible errant and you've been able to see through things and you've been this drive to overcome things in a way of, changing your life and changing things for other people, you've had plenty of challenges, as a mother and as a woman and all of those things. Can you give women just, share with them a few wisdom points or maybe one key one of what you live by and what that difference does that make in your life, why you adopted this perspective?
I feel like one of my one of my strengths that's most important to me, and I observe myself doing it, and I really enjoy watching myself do this, if that doesn't sound weird, is being able to accept people where they are in this moment. And it enables me to get into very deep and clear communication with people. And when I'm able to do that, I can, first of all, I can really help them in any way. And I'm not just talking professionally. I can do that with anyone in any area. Because when you accept somebody as they are in this moment, when you validate them, when you don't judge, you don't criticize, you fully embrace who they are and where they're at, you're that's love. That's literally opens up the love channel. And that's very healing. So no matter no matter what you're being presented with, if you're able to do that, not get defensive, not get critical, not get judgmental, just listen, really hear somebody. And sometimes you don't even have to offer them advice or guidance necessarily. You're just being there for them. And that's so valuable. And when I do that, I feel better too. I feel it's almost like a meditation, because for me, meditation is completely being in this moment, and there's nothing else. You're just existing in this moment. But when you do it with another individual, it's such a powerful feeling. And I find myself very capable of communicating deeply held um, understandings of, what I've learned in my life when when I achieve that. Hope that
You
made
just have you
sense.
have your it makes such perfect sense. And in fact, I just have like tears in my eyes as you're speaking because I feel like this is like a fundamental act of love. It is just like the core, and people just long to be seen. And the deepest fear in every human soul walking around until they heal it is that there's something wrong with them. It's that whole overlay. There's a lot of religious overlays and stuff there, but this is fundamentally something's wrong with me, and I've really screwed up and I'm flawed. And to have somebody really see who you are and love you, I mean, that is balm to the soul. That is just like, that is I think, the fundamental principle for a healer. I mean, that is like being in the now moment, seeing and accepting people for who they are and seeing the beauty in them. But you can't, Dr. Corey, you can't see the beauty in somebody else until you can see it in yourself, right? So this is where the journey comes in. As I've grown myself to be able to accept who I am and to see the angel within and to love her and appreciate her and admire her and be able to nurture her. I now look around and I see that I see the angel in other people where I didn't before. Before I could until I could see it in myself, I couldn't see it in others. Which is like a mouthful right there. But yeah, can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, did that resonate with you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Um, so my first husband, I got married when I was 22, and my first husband thought I was very beautiful. I never thought that about myself. I wanted to be beautiful my whole, younger years, childhood, teen, adolescence, but I didn't think I was. And he thought I was, and he would tell me all the time. And I finally was able to look in the mirror one day and see myself through his eyes. And I said, wow, I really am beautiful. And that was a turning point for me being able to accept myself as I actually was rather than seeing myself through critical eyes. And then in my 40s, no, sorry, mid 30s, I had a very interesting experience. I was in chiropractic school and I was in class, and the teacher, who was a chiropractor, knew how to do energy healing. And I had shoulder pain, and he told me to lay down, and this was in front of the whole class. And he started doing some kind of energy healing. I don't even know what he was doing because my eyes were closed. And all of a sudden, I saw or experienced myself when I was 10 years old. I had a very difficult childhood, which I don't remember if I've ever discussed with you. Um, when I was 10 years old, I was suicidal. I um, I hated my life. My life really actually was miserable. And I was contemplating suicide. And I had a kind of an epiphany that if I were to stay alive, I was going to devote the rest of my life to helping other people not suffer the way I was suffering. Obviously, that's the decision that I made when I was 10. I never looked back on it. But during this energy healing, I saw my sad 10-year-old self, and I just started crying. And here I am in the middle of the classroom with all these students watching. I couldn't control what I was experiencing. And I felt so sorry for her, for that 10-year-old. And the energy healer guy was able to sort of, I guess, calm me down, soothe me, did whatever he did. And when we finished, I was shivering and shaking, and I went into the bathroom and I looked in the mirror, and there she was, that 10-year-old. And I realized that up until that point, so I was probably about 36 when this was happening, all of those all of those years, I was trying to get rid of her, get her out of me, expel her. I was punishing her. I was neglecting her. I didn't want her because she was causing me pain and suffering. And I'm getting like chills when I'm talking about this. And when I looked in the mirror and saw her, I realized that I had to love her. I had to take care of her. And she was always going to be part of me. And it was such a transformation after that, where I was able to start learning how to love myself completely. And now I do. I mean, I don't know if there was like a moment or a line where I could say, okay, now I fully love every part of me. Um, I guess it was a process probably. But um, but yes, you're right. In order to be able to fully love others, you have to be able to fully love every part of you, even the parts that you don't like, that that are not perfect, that annoy you, that cause you trouble, and nurture them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I deeply feel that journey. In my own way, I deeply, deeply feel that. And I think it's really a part of the human condition and journey. And in like the mystic arts and the shamanic arts, this is something called like soul retrieval. It is one of the pinnacles and foundations of, or say like pillars of those beautiful healing arts, those type of healing arts. And what they're saying is that we get fractured when we're young, like to contemplating suicide as a 10-year-old. You think about that. What would drive a 10-year-old to that point, except that there's soul damage there. There's absolutely, and part of understanding that is those areas kind of separate off because you can't process it as a little child, right? You can't process, so you start putting these things aside because they're indigestible. They're just indigestible. They're this is not what life is supposed to be. So you can't, and a child doesn't have the equipment to digest this. So you start separating out these parts of yourself, right? And I know you know this, Dr. Corey. I'm just trying to like explain this for our listeners in a way that in using different terminology. So these parts get like separated out from us and they don't go away. They just become separate. So when you feel like as you're getting older, you just feel like there's something missing. What's probably missing in your life is are parts of you. And these are the deep wounds there. And so for the really deep healing, there's a lot of different ways to go through this healing, through but you need to go work with somebody that has done that and understands it. And I'll ask you in a minute, Dr. Cori, like how you address those things with your clients. My experience in the mystic arts has been a thing called soul retrieval. And it's like a shamanic journey in where you can either guide somebody through this or you can have the practitioner will do that for you. And you meet that part of yourself, like in this kind of work, the shamanic, the healer would go back and find, guide Dr. Corey to find that 10-year-old and have a dialogue with them and have, and just in this bringing back together, of that part. And it's really, really a powerful experience. And it's an absolutely needed experience because we're meant to be whole. And these separate parts of ourselves really create it's something missing. It's a missing component. Like if you're missing your inner child because of damage and destruction and trauma that was done when you're younger, then you're always compensating for that missing thing and always trying to protect her, probably in an unhealthy way, right? Because you develop your modes of protection, based on that child, and it doesn't serve you particularly as you get older.
Right.
So there's just so much involved with that, and I just wanting to highlight just how important what Dr. Corey was just sharing, and it's because it's a foundational journey is pulling those together. And even though I've done work in that area and I've done some of the key things, through this cold, for example, this cold I had, and I haven't been sick for years and years and years. I had this intense head cold, and there's just other stuff going on with it. So I had a session with my energy healer that I've been working with for years. We work remotely. She is amazing. I thoroughly trust her. We have a relationship, and that's been honed over years of having that trust. And I just say that trust because you work with the energy healer, you really need to be able to trust them with your energy field. So I do with this woman. And one of the things that ended up happening with it was a mini soul retrieval. I swear to God, we looked at this whole thing and it came down to there was a fractured part of myself that was looking to come back in, and this whole congestion and debris field in my head, was something to clear it out. There was a healing at that level that happened, and it was really beautiful and sweet. And the session was done. I was like, whoa, I feel like so much better. My head is clear. The next morning I woke up, I'm like, whoa, you know, it shifted things at the physical level really dramatically. So Dr. Corey, my question to you is, so you have a knowing of direct experience of healing and like the deeper core levels of it. How do you work with that? I'm just personally curious because you're working like with the body stuff. How do you integrate healing in that way with clients? Because you're not going, let's do the shamanic journey, I'm going to do a soul retrieval for you, but you're going to have to say it in a different way. How do you manage that with your clients?
So part of it is what I was talking about before, just being completely validating and accepting of who they are, because that starts them on their ability to heal whatever underlying issues are going on, or at least I help them develop an awareness when there is something like that that they need to work on. And I can recognize it usually. And then if needed, I will direct them to some kind of either energy healer, depending on who they are and what they're open to. Not everybody is open to energy healing. Um, I have somebody in my clinic that does Reiki. That's, sometimes helpful. Um, I might refer them to a shaman. I might refer them to an energy healer. I might refer them to a negative entity buster. Um, I've done all of the above. And then sometimes I have to just send them a video about, let's say, emotional freedom technique, tapping, or video about how to meditate. It really depends on the individual and what they're able to confront at that time. And I also recognize that not everybody wants to be helped. Not everybody is ready to heal. Not everybody is ready to confront things. So it's really just a matter of having developed over all these years my ability to see and understand what the person in front of me is willing and able to do.
That I feel is one of the earmarks of a true crone. And I said this before in my videos: is just because you get old, ladies, doesn't mean you become a crone. For me, the definition is of it is a woman in her wisdom. The crone being the crown, the crowning glory of wisdom, and embracing that. And for what you're describing here is this incredible sense that a crone will have learned through life, and that is this non-judgmental thing and loving people where they are, but also understanding and respecting everybody's soul journey. Because some people, they're not, we don't know why they incarnated. Maybe they need a time out life. Maybe they've been working really hard in other lives. And this life, man, I'm just going to be here and I'm just going to have fun. I want to eat, drink, and be merry. That is, you have to honor that. And maybe I just want to feel better so I can walk down to the mailbox and come back. I don't want to run a marathon. Sure, you have to be what you're describing. There's what you've got to discern in your relationship with your clients. But I think in general, as a crone, when we're looking at the people in our lives, whether it's our grandchildren, our children, our peers, our friends, or whatever, is we have a certain respect for people where they are. You just got to love them where they are. That's, there's nothing wrong with them. You got to get out of this like judging and the right and wrong thing. Because for me, it's been coming into my wisdom years is really like, observing people and understanding, oh, you know, this is where they're going to go in this life. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then there's other people that are going to go here. And there's other people that maybe they're going backwards, and just be the observer of it and love them no matter what. So talk a little bit about this, like because you're describing is higher wisdom is a mature woman. The whole right and wrong, I'm sure that's like a big one within yourself and within, dealing with other people is letting, and that's, we're talking about judgment. Is this like right or wrong? And I think I know what's best for you.
Yeah, people pay me money to help them to recover their health. So if they're doing that, I will point that out to them. You're you're literally giving me something valuable in exchange for me facilitating your improve your health improvement, your recovery. of whatever you're dealing with. So if we're going to have that exchange, it's an agreement, and I'm going to give you my clinical skills, my knowledge, my wisdom, my guidance, and I expect you to follow the recommendations. However, if you're unwilling to follow the recommendations, let's not enter into the agreement to begin with. So that's always my starting point. I don't actually begin that type of a relationship with a patient unless they're fully in agreement and willing to follow the recommendation. They fully understand what's going to be expected of them, which is simply, making some changes in their diet, um, showing up on a regular basis so I can monitor them, and maybe taking a few supplements. They know this up front. If they're not in full agreement with everything that I've said, then we don't start. That's all. I'm not going to waste your time, your energy, your money, or mine, because I'm there to help. So if they're not able or willing in that moment to move forward, then I won't be able to help. And I don't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
That's not going to serve the purpose that I have, which is to teach people how to be healthy.
Do you find a lot of things you're describing, they're so crone, there's such crone wisdom
Mm.
with that. Have you found that the older you've gotten and kind of crossing over that threshold of change, that you've been able to come into those understandings and that your practice has changed with people?
100%. I think what's changed the most is my comfort level in being able to look anybody in the eye and say these things to them with confidence. And I have no back off. I have no trepidation. The ability to confront, which sounds aggressive, right? Confrontation. The ability to confront is to be able to look clearly and squarely at something and not back off and not flinch and do what needs to be done, say what needs to be said. So everything that I do and say is in an effort to help and guide and heal. So my ability to confront is much higher now because I don't have fear. I don't have fear of being rejected. I don't have fear that somebody won't agree with me. None of that matters to me. If you and I are here on the same frequency and we're ready to move forward together, wonderful. And if we're not, okay, that's okay too.
I love that. I didn't until I actually came into my elder years and my transition and the whole hormonal pattern calmed down that I really saw the depth of my people pleasing tendencies, that insecurity. Like I was aware of it, I worked on certain things, but there was like this depth of understanding and seeing it that I was able to see it on when I got to the other side of that. And that's exactly what you're talking about. So this is one of the blessed things that happens later on, is that we're not dictated by that. We don't need you to like us. We don't need you to hate us. We don't need you to affirm us. We just don't, like, we have a sense of self-awareness that gives the crone the ability to extend themselves and to love others and to help other people. And that's what we're supposed to be doing in society as older women. It's like the grandma figure, whether you're a grandma or not, is just the elder thing, is that our arms and our embrace becomes greater and becomes cleaner. We can just love people and give them a safe space, wherever it is. For Dr. Cori, it's healing people. It's this space, safe place. You come in here, we'll work together according to your free will, your agreement, and I can provide this powerful thing for you because I see you. That's so important, is I see you. You're lovable, health you is achievable, all these things, but work with me. And so such a beautiful, you're a beautiful example, Dr. Cori, of taking crone wisdom and serving people as a healer in a very specific way. It's powerful because you've gone through it. did your work to get to there. And that's why it's the crowning glory of an older woman is like, you don't just get old and you just get it, you're there. You had to go through some challenges. You were forged in the crucible of life, you came out the other side is a beautiful piece of gold, beautiful, precious, precious metal. Um, yeah, so oh my gosh, I just thank you so much in sharing that and being honest about it. And I want to take a few minutes here, if it's okay with you, because this is what you do is you help people, you help, women in particular through these changes, whether you're on the other side or coming up to it. Could you speak a little bit about that? And I mean, you already said a lot about how you work with that, but I want to maybe give people just a couple tips they can do on their own. And then we'll also post the links so women can reach out to you. Because Dr. Cori, in some of our past interviews, has shared, some practical supplementation people can take that you just do on their own, and we can have links for that. But also that you work more in depth. So let's do a little practical stuff. Like I'm listening to this is like, oh, Dr. Cori, give me a couple words of advice of making this nurturing, taking care of this body as it ages.
You mentioned something already that's so very important, and that's getting enough rest, getting enough sleep. A lot of people don't do that anymore. And it's something that I run into quite frequently, especially with working moms, where once the kids are in bed, they feel like that's their only opportunity to have me time, and they'll stay up really, really late, particularly staying up on their devices. So their exposure to blue light and electromagnetic fields that are not good for them. And then they don't get enough rest. And I see this happening with people chronically, and that will accelerate your aging process. So, getting enough good quality sleep is key. You do most of your repair in your deep sleep. You produce a hormone called human growth hormone that repairs damage in your body, and you secrete most of it during deep sleep. Your your human growth hormone secretion levels start to decline after age 35. So it becomes even more important to get enough good quality sleep after age 35. That's why people don't recover, they don't bounce back as well as they're aging. So that's number one. Number two, I find many people, women, chronically dehydrated. I don't know if you saw how many times I took some sips of water during this video. Um, so chronic dehydration will age you more quickly. You will literally experience dryness, dry eyes, dry skin, vaginal dryness. If your muscles become dry, they will not work as well. They will injure more easily. Uh, Dehydration is a major issue. Good job. And then adding a little good quality salt to your water is a very good idea for most women. It helps with hydration. So pink salt, sea salt, it helps with hydration. And um, your adrenal glands, which are your stress glands, need salt to function properly. So if you're salt deficient and your adrenal glands get depleted, that's going to accelerate your aging process. The adrenal glands produce a estrogen precursor called DHEA. They become there's a bigger demand on your adrenal glands as your estrogen levels are beginning to decline, usually starting in the 40s. So you want to make sure you're feeding them and treating them well so that they work properly. There's a lot more we can do for the adrenal glands, and making sure you're not salt deficient is important. And then, of course, exercise. Um, Making sure that your bones and muscles stay in good shape and that your circulation is nurtured. So movement, this is also a problem. A lot of people sit too much. Sitting is as bad for you as smoking cigarettes as far as aging goes. So keeping your circulation going, if you don't have blood flowing to every area in your body, something's going to go wrong somewhere, right? So movement. It doesn't have to be heavy exercise. You don't have to um, become a, go what you were describing your friend in her 70. You don't have to enter a competition, but walking, dancing, um, cycling, just moving, preferably something you enjoy doing. It shouldn't be a chore. It shouldn't be something that you're dreading, right? Something that nurtures you. So I love walking out in nature. I take my dog to the park every day. Favorite part of my day. I walk up some hills. That's it. That's all I do. That's all I do. And that's all I need. So I just try not to sit also. And then I dance if it's not nice out and I can't walk around, I dance in my bedroom. My dog thinks I'm crazy. He watches me like I'm a weirdo, but I don't care.
Oh, I'm sure he loves you. You're like, that's my mama. That's my mama doing her thing. I love you, Doctor. We did a whole interview on menopause, and remember we did that one. So I'm going to put a link
Yes.
below because in that one at the end, it's really fascinating because she goes in a lot more in depth with it. Then at the end, she also has recommendations for different supplements, and I think I have some links associated. I'll find that one and I'll attach it on the bottom. But then you can just see what she's recommending, just some general things to take that will be healthy. And you can get them through on her website, super, super easy. Order those. And if you want to work with Dr. Cori on your own specific health issues, go deeper. You have different, other goals that you want to move through because we often need help. I need throughout my life. I'm not afraid to admit I need help. I think having a coach in whatever area in our life, somebody that this is their area of expertise, has always far outweighed the money that I've spent with coaches. I've always been so grateful for the help that I've gotten to get me to the place where I just can't quite get there myself. So I'd recommend that. I recommend if you want to reach out to her, I think you offer a free consultation, right? Where people do you still offer that? Is there a free, or is there a paid consultation? Um, Tell me what women
People,
can do.
usually what happens is people send me an email describing what they're struggling with, and then I'll give them some choices about how we can proceed. So I have some very low cost program choices, and then I have comprehensive health improvement program choices that follow people over a longer period of time.
Nice, nice. But you need to get some information from people first
Right,
on
right,
what to make your recommendations with.
right.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So all those links will be below for this video, how you can move, forward with Dr. Cori if you so wish to, so choose to. But for everybody else, Dr. Cori, thank you so much for your time and your inspiring story of how you've lived your life true to you and some of the things. And there's more you've overcome. But you shared some really beautiful just have touched my heart with the stories you've shared as far as what's made you the woman you are today and how you've moved through those. So kudos to you for being you. I feel like you're another one of these women that's unabashedly been you. It's not always been easy, far from that, because you haven't gone with the grain. You've been somebody that's just been called an errant. We want to call it an errant, a rebel, whatever. Is just you've had a different calling in life and you've done it and you've pursued it. So my hat's off to you, my friend. Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you.
Uh, and as always, we're going to wrap this up with our little sign off, which is peace from within, because that's where it starts. So my blessings to you all. And until next time, peace be with you.